Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to Chelsea Fan TV and welcome to another episode of the Chelsea Fan TV podcast. Guys, you know what to do. First things first, smash the likes on the video, subscribe to Chelsea Fan TV if you haven't done so already, and make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below on today's episode. And there's plenty going on. It's been a busy start to the week. We've had Pochettino unveiled first interview with the in-house club media. It's got everyone very excited again. He said some great things. We'll dive into that. We got a load of transfer news to get into. Some strange links, potentially looking to re-sign Livramento, which was an odd one. Got Hakim Ziyech's latest Instagram post, which is certainly interesting to say the least. And there's loads more to get into. Transfer targets, Caicedo, the youngsters that we seem to be signing. Is that the right route for the club to go down? There's lots to get into, so we might as well get this show on the road. Delighted to be joined by Matisse. Mate, thank you so much for coming. It's greatly appreciated. First of all, mate, what have you made of kind of Chelsea's transfer window so far? Because for me, I've looked at it and I thought, no, the main priority sort of June, let's get as many guys out of the club as we possibly can. And then in in July, we can get rid of sort of the remaining stragglers and then start to really focus on the incomings. You quite content with where Chelsea are at right now?
I think for me, yeah, logically, I'm kind of separating it in my head in two parts, obviously outgoings and incomings, because they effectively are two windows in itself. Like the amount of outgoings we need to do is as much business as you'd want to do, in totality in terms of both incoming and outgoing. So for me, I'm looking at the outgoings. I'm very impressed with the fact that we've got this many players off the book so far. Obviously, there's a few others that need to be moved on. Ziyech, we're going to get to, of course, Aubameyang is still here. Lukaku still has to be decided and sorted. Azpilicueta, mutual termination of the contract. So at Hudson-Odoi, I'm seeing that, Chelsea are even considering potentially terminating his contract as well, or, potentially, coming up with some sort of agreement as to how his wages are going to be paid when his contract will 100% drop off that 120k mark with his next club, potentially a Premier League lower level club. So there's a lot going on in terms of outgoings. We were never going to get it all done in June, but going into preseason, the main aim for me was like, let's not have a squad of 45 players for Pochettino to have to deal with. But in terms of incomings, we've got the Jackson deal done, which is a player that I don't really know much about. I think everybody's really just, we've just tried to do the subsurface kind of level research in terms of what he's done in very small space of times, very short time span in terms of his Villarreal form. They're obviously going off that from last season, but there isn't much there to go off. You just kind of have to hope that the scouts have got that one right. I'm not really too disappointed in the fact that we're not going for a bigger name if we don't, because I personally feel like, striker position has kind of haunted us anyway for a while. We've always thrown money at it and very rarely got it right. So I'm actually fine with a young, promising, potentially player to develop in that position for Poch. But in terms of the rest of the team, for me, goalkeeper is really important. I don't know what's going on with the goalkeeper right now, whether it's PR in terms of we can't afford the top targets, or is it that Pochettino doesn't want the top targets because he rates Kepa that highly? I think the two things are completely different. If Pochettino rates Kepa that highly, I'm disappointed, but I'm ready to go with it. And I personally feel like he isn't a top goalkeeper. He's not good enough to take us where we're going, where we're trying to go. But we may have to learn that the hard way. But in terms of if we can't afford the top goalkeeper, that for me is even more annoying, because now you're telling me that potentially some of the money that we've spent on players that, listen, I'm happy for us to sign young, promising players, but I do think there has to be a cut-off point as to how many we sign, because it doesn't feel like there's ever an end. It just seems like an ongoing, cycle of sign constantly 10, 15, 20 million euros. This young player. And I've always felt like, listen, of course, we're going to loan some of them out to Strasbourg or to other clubs in the multi-club model. Of course, we're going to try and make a profit. But the academy, let's not forget, we actually produce some top quality talent. Livramento, we're going to get into. There's so many other talents as well that we've produced for free in terms of a transfer cost. Obviously, from a development cost, there's costs there. So we can't neglect that. And I think if you overbuy, you're going to put a lot of the potential academy staff and the academy down, in the younger age groups off, which I don't want us to do. But also, I feel like we're going, and it's not the first time this happened. Roman Abramovich did this as well. We used to buy Lucas Piazon, all these talents constantly, and we didn't see half of them, 75% of them. I don't want us to overdo it. I don't want us to over, kind of double stack, triple stack, because then you're starting to harm the talents you've signed. Now you're starting to, all your good work is almost going to waste because you can only have so much. If you triple, quadruple stack these talents in the same position, then how are they going to develop? How are they going to get the right development and right coaching needed? You're going to start having to rush loans because you've got too many players and make snap decisions and judgments. And I just feel like there's at some point enough is enough.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, there's obviously a lot to get into. Let's just take it back to start of the week yesterday. Pochettino, obviously at Cobham, looking great in the new training gear, which looks pretty nice. Can't lie. What did you make of his interview? Because obviously everyone's getting very excited by it. Look, I can't lie. I was like, it's like we've almost forgotten what it's like to have a manager at the club. Everyone's so excited. But do you know what? He spoke really well. It's what you'd expect from a manager of his experience and the clubs that he's been at. It sounds like he's keen to emphasize. He's done his research on the club as you would expect. He speaks like he knows what it means like to be at a big club. I didn't always get that sense from Graham Potter. I think he knows what the expectations are at Chelsea. And just, certain parts that, players are going to be prepared to die for the badge. That's what we're going to promise, all that sort of thing. Because last season, me and from watching Chelsea a lot last season, that players weren't prepared to give everything for the team, for the shirt. And at the first time we went a goal down, that was game over. We were finished. So look, I felt he said some really good stuff. Again, it's just talk, and ultimately it's going to be what you do on the pitch is going to be the most important thing. But I think as far as a first communication with the fans goes, it was pretty good. He ticked all the right boxes. He came across really well. He said kind of what we wanted to hear. And it is a promising start. But as I said, that's all well and good saying that, but you're going to be judged on not how you speak, but what we get on the pitch. But if you can do both, then that's great. But I mean, what are your thoughts on it initially, like as far as that went?
For me, when I'm looking at it just in totality with Poch, I did a stream yesterday, first of all, and I was kind of tongue in cheek, just, as you said, I'm almost shocked that we have a manager, right? For the first time, it feels like since Tuchel, we've got a real proper top level manager. So I've definitely, rode that until the walls have fallen off, and literally every single anything that was good in that press conference, I amplified to praise on my channel, because I just think it was a brilliant press conference. Like, jokes aside, I really do think it was a proper top-notch press conference. He was talking about, us in terms of making it, inclusive. I felt like a lot of the time last season, Potter and Lampard, it was kind of like, not my problem. Like, I'm coming into a mess. I'll handle it when I can and when I see fit, but don't expect too much from me right now in terms of, winning and trying to get results on the board. It wasn't an easy situation, but Pochettino already is talking about just what Chelsea fans need to hear, which is, we need to get back to winning. The winning mentality needs to be put into this young group of players. He's talking about players that need to die for the badge. And, he's talking about basically trying to create a culture. And I think that's kind of gone very much missing. And we've become a bit confused over the last year. So I thought his interview was fantastic. I thought hit the nail on the head throughout. And I think for him, and this is why I wanted him in the first place, because this whole, he's a Tottenham manager, former Tottenham manager, he's a bottler. I always felt like these were very lazy arguments. We've had managers that have come to this club before, like Sarri, for instance, who hadn't won anything previously. And he'd come in and won a European trophy and really should have won the League Cup final as well, but for an offside decision on Hazard from a Loftus-Cheek pass. So finished third. So, that's kind of what we're aiming to this season. In my opinion, we need to be trying to get back into the Champions League, and we need to be winning a cup. We need to win something. I think that's crucial. This team has lost, I think, 5 Wembley finals in a row.
I think it's 6, mate. It's worse.
If it's 6, then wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just tallying them up in my head. I'm going through
3 FA Cup finals in a row, 2 League Cup finals, and I think there's something. I think there's one more. Oh, there's 4 FA Cups. Arteta when they beat Lampard, and then the 3 in a row: Leicester, Liverpool, and there was another one.
Is there another one? I thought it was 5, but I know there's 2 League Cup ones. Obviously, you've got Man City. And you've got Liverpool on penalties.
It might just be 5.
I think it might be 5.
It's still terrible anyway.
It's horrendous regardless. I was thinking maybe you might have been thinking of a Community Shield, but we obviously never made it because we never won no FA Cup anyway. We didn't win the FA Cup, so there would have been no Community Shield for us to lose. But yeah, 5 in a row is poor, and without that Champions League, thankfully we got it. That then spiraled into 2 more competitions in the Super Cup and Club World Cup. But you take that, if the margins has changed in that Champions League final, a little moment goes against us. Suddenly we haven't won a trophy since Conte, which is 6 years. So it's very fine margins between winning and losing, and we've been on the wrong side of it far too often. So yeah, I think we have to win something. For me, I think it's perfect for him as well to kind of get that monkey off his back.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's almost a perfect starting point for him as well. Like Chelsea, you're coming in, and Chelsea's stock couldn't really be any lower after last season. So anything he does or any improvements are going to be lapped up by the fans, considering how poor it has been. So I think from that point of view, it's very good for him. I think it's also good that he's coming in and he's starting from scratch in terms of new squad, young players. He can just mold everything into how he wants to do it. So I think that's going to be a big plus. Again, we know that he likes working with young players. I think, look, whatever you think of Chelsea and how poor we were last season, I very much look at this as a one-off and think, actually, when you look at the squad, obviously we haven't got all our additions in yet, but when you look at what's there, there's some really exciting, young, talented players, some of the best from across Europe. There's guys that I think a lot of managers would want to work with. Who wouldn't want to work with the likes of Enzo Fernandez, Reece James, Mudryk, Madueke, and Kunku and stuff like that? This is a basis of a good team here. We just need to add a few more ingredients to it and allow Pochettino to do what he needs to do on the training pitch. And, whilst it's annoying that we're not playing European football and those midweeks are going to be shit for us when we're just sitting back and watching everyone else play, actually all that additional time on the training ground is going to be a big plus to us. And I know people might say, that's like a sort of a cop-out thing to say when you're not in Europe, but it is going to be massively beneficial because we know that Poch, likes to form an identity. We know, his pre-seasons are tough. We're going to be fit, which is going to be another big plus because you watch us last season. The only thing that Lampard, for me, got right was the fact that these guys weren't fit 30 minutes and we were finished. These guys in pre-season are going to have a bit of a shock when they get all this running going and whatnot. But I'm excited, but we absolutely need to. I think the top 5 is going to help us big time because obviously Champions League going to 5th with a new model and all those extra matches. So with a coefficient, I think top 5 gets it next season. So that's going to be a plus because you look at the Premier League and whilst we want to sit here and say, oh yeah, Chelsea are definitely going to get back in the Champions League next season. City, obviously phenomenal. Arsenal are doing mad business, whether we want to admit it or not. They could be serious again next season. Liverpool have done some very good business. They'll be back in the mix. United are always there or thereabouts. And you've got teams like Newcastle, even Aston Villa are moving mad in the transfer market and Brighton as well. So there's sort of 7 or 8 teams and Tottenham, 7 or 8 teams going for 5 places. There's no guarantees that we even get back in there. So that's why the recruitment's got to be so good. And we've got to take all the advantage we can of playing once a week. And there's no excuse for us to be making multiple rotations in a League Cup match. You know what's mad as well? Just realised we got to play second round of the League Cup.
We do. And it's only Southern teams in it as well.
Yeah.
Jesus. This is proper. This is proper. I don't know. I guess when we finished 10th under Conte, that would have been not Conte, sorry, when we finished 10th after that Mourinho sacking, I guess that would have been a similar situation maybe, but I just don't remember having to play in the second round before.
Nice.
But you're right, you're spot on, bro. Like you look at Aston Villa, they've signed Tielemans, you take a look at, they've signed
Pau Torres as well.
Pau Torres, and they've already got Kamara from last year, Douglas Luiz and McGinn, so much talent in that team. So much depth, and they're going to be in the Conference League as well. Brighton obviously have qualified for Europe, so they're making their additions. But I think I'd expect them to feel weaker this year. Obviously, they've got a better manager for the full season after De Zerbi obviously started after we took Potter, but they've lost. I expect them to lose Caicedo because I expect Caicedo to come to us. They've lost McAllister, so that midfield they've made some replacements, but surely those replacements can't be as good as those 2 players off the bat. And obviously they've got more games, so we should be able to we have to be able to leapfrog these 2 teams, and then of course outside of Tottenham, everybody else is also in Europe as well that we've mentioned, the bigger clubs. So we have to get back into the top 5 this season. I think anything short of that with no European football is really, really poor, extremely poor. So for me, that's a must, man. That's a must.
No, absolutely is. I mean, there's no guarantees or anything in football or anything like that. But we simply have to. Yeah, all right. If you gave me sixth place at this, like right now, would I take it? Possibly. If we won a cup as well, you might take that. But we've got to get back in the Champions League, because whilst we're relying on our kind of our pool as Chelsea, another season without Champions League football, we aren't going to be so lucky, I don't think, in getting some of the bigger, more experienced players. I think, with the incentivized wage structure we're offering, with the way the club are looking to go down now, I don't think you're going to get many experienced players that are going to buy into that sort of thing. It's far easier to convince these youngsters from slightly more obscure leagues or that are on lesser money to come into Chelsea and buy into the project and buy into like a lower base wage and that incentivized business. That's going to be a lot easier for them, rather than trying to get more established players who are just going to want big money off the bat. So whilst it's all well and good managing the wage bill and doing all this, we do need to get into that Champions League football to still be attractive to top talent. I refuse to believe that we are literally going to be a team that now, for Bowley's ownership, we're just going to shop for players 25 and under. Like, I don't know. I could be totally wrong. But mate, just on that, what are your thoughts on the direction that we're going down as a club? Because, it's something very different for us that have grown up in a generation of watching Roman win, just sign all the biggest names in football, chuck hundreds of millions at players, don't really give it much thought. We're now going down a much more measured approach, a much more data-driven approach, buying youngsters with high potential, kind of discovering players before they become 60, 70, 80 million pound players. Now, that's all well and good if you're a Brighton, where you've got less pressure, more time to chuck these guys straight in. I feel like at Chelsea, like where the pressure is immense and, success is demanded instantly, that you've got to win straight away. Are we really in a position to be just chucking these youngsters straight into the team and be like, oh, it'll be fine? They'll, like, if we lose a few games here and there, it's all right. They're getting more experience. I mean, what do you think of the route we're going down? Because it's certainly different. And whatever way you look at it, it's a big gamble.
It is a big gamble. I think it's not to say that it can't work, because we've seen Arsenal's, very, very young team push City as much as they possibly could before the massive collapse. But I wouldn't take a sixth with a cup. I'm so desperate for us to qualify for Champions League with the cup as well. But if you're telling me that we're going to bottle a title race in the first season, as much as that wouldn't help Pochettino's, kind of aura, I would take that, because that means we're challenging, which is a massive step up from where we've been. We haven't really challenged for a title since we won it. So if we were building one of the best young teams out there, and we were then going on to challenge for the league, and we were falling short because of a lack of experience, then no problem. We can go from there. Then you build on top of that with top players, and you keep pushing until you win it. I think nobody has a divine right to win, but I think at Chelsea you need to be competitive. At a bare minimum, you need to be competing. So that is the aim. And I think for me personally, I think it's tough to judge right now, because the window's not closed. If we don't sign any key core starters in this lineup, and I'm not asking for much, because I'm actually of the opinion that less is more right now. I think, I don't want us to sign too many players. The more players we sign, the more worried I actually get, to be honest, because we've already got many players that haven't done a full season yet. Mudryk, Madueke, Enzo, Fernandes, Badiashile. Plenty of players in Nkunku and Gusto have just come in. Jackson's already here as well. We've got a lot of players that need integrating, that need, they need to settle, let alone adding a lot more on top. So my thing was just address the spine of the team. The striker's in the door now. Whether or not people think that that's the highest level of striker or the level of striker we needed, for me is now become redundant, because I definitely don't want us to sign two strikers. I think if you sign a striker, you have to go with that striker. He's got momentum, he's got confidence, he's on form. Back end of the season, you give it to him and you go with him and Broja and Nkunku, and you try to spread the goals out, similar to how Arsenal did last season. I don't see a point in buying a big name and benching this one, and then next thing you know, you've pushed his confidence down the drain before he's even kicked a ball. We don't have enough games, so now it's just about midfield for me. Defensive midfield, and obviously if the goalkeeper is not going to be addressed, then it is what it is. But outside of that, I think the defense is sorted. I do worry when I see links like Livramento, because I think to myself, what is actually the point in that? I know he can play out wide. I know in the academy played out wide, but we have plenty of young wingers. You look how many young wingers we've signed. One from the Benfica B team. We've signed We've signed, I think,
Angelo from Santos as well.
yeah, Angelo's come in. We've signed, this Ecuadorian, wonder kid.
Yeah.
We've signed so many young wingers. I don't understand what, and we've already just, and that's not even including January, the young wingers we signed as well in Mudryk and Madueke. I don't see why we're going again for him if that's the plan. And at right back, I think self-explanatory. We don't need more than 2 right backs, especially when they're both young. So I'm hoping that's just a dead link, and the Daily Mail are just trying to, get their clicks up for the month and push their quota, because there's no need for me to be seeing Livramento off the back of a massive injury. Let him do what he's doing at Southampton in the Championship. That time has come and gone as far as I'm concerned. So links like that, they trouble me because I don't understand the logic behind it. But if it's not true, then fair enough. I think, I'm looking at Carney, I'm looking at Andre Santos, I'm looking at Cassidy. We have potentially signed some really high potential midfielders with leadership and with, the bit between their teeth, not just talent, but also young captains of their young national teams. And I don't want to get to a point where I'm looking at it and thinking, didn't really get to see if that player could make it at Chelsea, because we either blocked them by putting more young talent on top of young talent, or we just sent them on pointless loans because we didn't really think it through, because the multi-club model is even not in place yet, which is not. We've only got Strasbourg. We have to remember that. We can't send everybody to Strasbourg, because no one's going to convince me everybody needs to go to Strasbourg. That's the best place for their development. There's only a few that you send there for Patrick Vieira to work with, so he can focus on them, give them chances, and then obviously bed them in with his actual team that are trying to compete for positions in League One. We're not going to send 10 players out there. I think there must be a rule on that anyway. So we need to have multiple clubs in the multi-club model, and we've got 1. And you look at the City group, they've got about 8. So 8 or 9. So we're way off the mark in terms of that. We're not there yet. So that for me is a thing where if you're going to recruit youngsters, listen, there's always going to be more youngsters that pop up that you're going to want. It's like being in a shop. If you're my younger brother, if he's in a shop, he sees this sweet. He wants all the sweets. And you say, listen, go and get 1 or 2. And next time you go to a shop, there'll be more. You don't have to pick up every single sweet. And then, what do we do? Because, I feel sick now. That's basically what we're doing, to put it in an analogy. So I just feel like, if you're going to build the club model, you build that by step, acquire a club or 2 every year. And then that allows you to acquire maybe more youngsters because you have more places to send them.
I mean, it almost feels like to me that we're slightly just going by for a volume technique, for want of a better phrase. And like, we just buy as many as possible, more will work out than not. It feels like, I'm not saying there's not any thought going into it, but as you say, like we've just got Strasbourg. If we can add a club from Portugal like Rio Ave or Portimonense that they've been talking about, if you can add maybe another club in France, you get somewhere in Italy or wherever it may be around the world, then you've got more options to send these youngsters out. And ultimately, it is twofold. And people, I see people moaning on Twitter like, we're becoming a selling club and all that. Football's a business at the end of the day, and this is a way of. I almost look at it as win-win, because you either get some decent players for the first team if they work out at a cheap price, or you buy them for cheap. You then develop them for a couple of years on loan at your multi-club model, and then you flip them for a profit. You might get double your money. So I can understand it from that way as well. And it's just, I think with fans, it's just a different way of operating as a club. And when people aren't used to Chelsea operating this way, it always gets criticised, and you think, why are we doing that? Because we've been so ingrained in operating in a different way. But look, I don't think it's the end of the world. But again, it does. When I see it, I'm just like, well, hang on a second. You see that, well, we either can't afford a goalkeeper, or we don't want to spend a load of money on a goalkeeper. But then suddenly we've signed 3 youngsters for like 30, 40 odd million, but we can't go and sign, but we're not prepared to go and spend that sort of money on a goalkeeper. So you do have to get your balance right. But I just wanted to move it on to midfield. Obviously, at the moment, we're pretty threadbare. Obviously, the window's got a long way to go. But at this point in time, we've got Enzo Fernandez, Conor Gallagher, and then Chukwuemeka, Cassidy, and Andre Santos. Now, that's not, no disrespect to the younger lads, but that's not really it at this point in time. We presume that Moises Caicedo is going to come in. Mate, do you envisage any issues with Brighton? It feels like for the longest time possible, we've been preparing a bid. I don't know what preparations go into a bid. We've obviously got the money. I'm not really sure what the hold-up is. There must be some sort of stuff in place. There's obviously more to it than that, but it seems like we've been preparing this bid for a while. I guess we just want to make sure that we know how much Brighton want and then just offer it to them, so we don't end up with like a Mason Mount situation where it's like multiple bids drawn out over a number of weeks, running the risk of other clubs getting involved in the race. We don't want that. Like, for me, if they want 85 million, let's just give it to them in whatever way that we agree for.
Yeah.
Do you envisage any issues or any issues with this bid? Because Brighton will want more clubs to come in, but at this point in time, it pretty much does seem, without tempting fate, it looks like a one-horse race, and it's for us to throw away.
Yeah, it does. I mean, one of the reasons why I was so happy that Arsenal went for Kai Havertz is because I knew then they wouldn't get Caicedo. I knew Arteta would see him as a midfielder. There's no reason for him to sign him as a striker with Jesus and Trossard playing that false nine the same way as Kai Havertz would. So you'd be triple stacking on exactly the same profile. So he was always going to try and play him as one of those eights. I'm not particularly scared of that possibility. I think we've banked good money for Kai Havertz, and we need to put that to good use. And obviously they've gone for Declan Rice. You take a look at Liverpool; they're clearly not going to go for him now. You know, they've moved on Lavia potentially. They've already signed Szoboszlai and they've already signed McAllister, so that would be enough for them. Manchester United, they've gone and got Mason Mount now, and they haven't got their ownership situation sorted. And Manchester City are the only ones that you could look at who have limitless money and could easily come in and say, listen, this could be a player to partner with Rodri, and maybe Cover just is used as a squad player, which, you know, he's very injury prone. He'd probably be rotated regardless. So I'm still wary of potential other clubs coming in, but we are perfectly poised. I think I'm along with you. Brighton, I don't really understand why negotiating with them has become such a pain for us, because I think we've actually done them quite a few favors. You look at Tariq Lamptey going there, you look at Gilmour going there, you look at us paying obviously how much we paid for Potter and the perfect placement.
Cucurella as well.
Cucurella, record fee for a fullback. So, and you know, Levi Colwill on loan. I don't really understand why Brighton. I expect the relationship with Brighton to actually be quite good. It doesn't feel like that way on social media, but I expect it to be quite a good relationship. There's plenty that they can get from us in terms of the way that we you know, send young promising players out on loan year after year, and they've benefited from that, and even signed a few. There's no reason for that relationship to be fractured. If anything, it should be an easier negotiation than with other clubs. So for me, I just want to get this deal done. I think once this deal is done, if it gets done, I am a lot calmer with this window in terms of what our starting 11 looks like for next season. As much as I would prefer to get a new goalkeeper, I've seen Kepa in goal before. You know, my mind can process that and handle that for another season if I have to. But what I can't process is that midfield right now as it is. I think, you know, that's a lot of pressure to put on Andre Santos and Carney. I want them in the squad. I think Cassidy's going to go out on loan to a Premier League club or a Serie A club. That's fine. I'm happy to have them in the squad for sure. I want them to get minutes, but I do want a double pivot that is Premier League starting top 4, top 5 quality guaranteed. Because we can't take these risks. And then after that, you've got your young players that can come in if they impress in pre-season. Hopefully they do. Then they can get minutes. You know, we've got cup games, but I have no problem with them, you know, even starting the odd game coming off the bench. But I just need to know that Enzo's got a partner of top quality next season. Otherwise, we're taking too much of a gamble. I think Caicedo it's a must. Some people will say we need 2 midfielders. We definitely need minimum 1. I would say it seems that we're going to look at the way Andre Santos plays in pre-season, and if he does show signs that he could be potentially a backup to Caicedo as a defensive-minded midfielder, then we may leave that situation to him, which I'm not overly worried about, because, you know, you look at Lavia, you know, he's going to cost 50 million. He's only had 1 Premier League season under his belt. Yeah. We were looking to pay 50 million before he even made his debut. or before he'd even played 3 or 4 games. I think he'd only played a couple of games when the deadline day was coming up for that bid from Southampton. Bearing in mind, he just signed that same summer with Joe Shields. So I'm not worried about, you know, I mean, Caicedo's only been around for a year as well.
He's played less than 50 games for Brighton.
Yeah. So
his rise has been massive in that, but when it is a little bit hypocritical, when people go bang on about, oh, we've got to sign experience, why are we always signing all these youngsters? But everyone's bang on board with, oh, let's get Caicedo in. But yeah, he's played less than 50 games for Brighton. Yes, he's very good and all that, but he wouldn't classify him in some people's terms as an experienced player. But he's clearly very good, massively high potential, great ceiling. And look, I don't want to compare him to Kante, but I think he's the closest in profile to Kante, the way that he gets around the pitch, the work that he does off the ball. He's very good on the ball. Like, for me, he'd be perfect alongside Enzo Fernandez. And then I agree with you in terms of a second midfielder. Yes, it would be ideal if we could get one, but at some point, we've got to start believing in what we're doing. We've chosen to go down this route of data-led recruitment, of signing talented youngsters. At some point, we've got to give these guys a chance and back ourselves and believe in what we're doing. So the likes of your Chukwuemeka's, your Casadets, your Andre Santos's, I'm not saying that all three are going to be involved in the squad next season. Let's see how they're getting on pre-season and go from there. But I would look at it, and whilst I think Romeo Lavia is a very talented player, he's 6 months older than Andre Santos. Is it really worth spending 50 million quid or 40 to 50 million quid on Lavia at the expense of giving Santos more of a chance? Like, does that make sense? Would it be better for us really to go down the route of, right, let's back ourselves in what we're doing in the market. We trust ourselves. We trust these young players. And let's go and see what they do. I'm not saying that they're going to play every single game, but start odd game here and there, come off the bench, give us half an hour, give us an hour if they start or whatever. Like, we have to start believing in what we're doing and backing ourselves. There's no point signing all these youngsters and then not using them and then going and signing a Lavia for 50 odd million quid just to use him instead of an Andre Santos or a Casadei or a Chukwuemeka or whatever. So, like, whilst I feel, yes, if there was an suitable player there, like if we'd got Agate and we went Agate and Caicedo, I'd be delighted with that. But the other options, you look out there now and you think, right, Kefram Turam, who Liverpool have been linked with, Bayern Munich are sniffing around him as well. Look at Manu Kone, who I think is actually someone told me the other day that he'd done his ACL. I haven't actually looked into it, but links have gone very quiet on him. And then you look at it and you've got Lavia, Kone, and Turam. If you're not going to get any of those three, like if you're going to sort of below number 3 on your list of targets, you might as well give a chance to what you've got. When you start getting 4th, 5th, and 6th on the list, there's no point. Just call it a day. So I think we've got to start believing in what we're doing and trust these youngsters. And a lot of people aren't going to like that. They're going to be like, oh, we've got no experience or whatever. But the players who are linked with signing, all right, aren't massively experienced either. They've got perhaps a little bit more experience, having played sort of top flight football in Europe, in European leagues and stuff. But ultimately, for me, we just need to believe in what we're doing. And if you've gone down this route, you've got to start believing in yourself at some point in time. So, I mean, would you be happy to give Chukwuemeka more of a chance next season and maybe a Casadei or a Santos as one of the other ones, and we just sign a Caicedo and we just roll with it and we see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, my thing was, you know, either you're getting, I think the aim is either you're getting a potential backup 10 to the Nkunku, or you're getting a defensive midfielder. I wouldn't go and get both. So, and that's not including Caicedo. So I think if you're getting Caicedo, you're potentially getting one more, depending on Gallagher, because I think Gallagher, you know, he is key in this. If Gallagher stays, then it's less likely. You know, if Gallagher leaves, then I think, okay, now you probably definitely do need to go and get another midfielder to replace all of those outgoings. Plus, you've got the young players as well. But if you're getting a backup 10 and you're using Carney and Andre Santos as your double pivot protection in terms of backup players, then you have your 4 there with Caicedo. If you're using Carney as a 10, then potentially then you do get another deeper midfielder, and then you've got Andre Santos and another option like maybe a Paulinho. That balances out the midfield quite nicely. Now you've got an experienced defensive midfielder alongside a lot of young talent. That would be my preference personally, is to go and get an experienced defensive midfielder like that, who's not blocking, you know, any pathways, but at the same time is providing balance and is providing reassurances, especially if you can bring him off the bench, close a game off. You know, you're bringing a different profile that we don't have physically. So for me, it just depends on what Poch sees Andre Santos and Carney's positions are, what happens with Gallagher as to how much we need and how much we go for. But I agree with you. I think that the main thing needs to be get Caicedo in, give Carney and Andre Santos the pre-seasons to impress, find out what we're doing with Gallagher. It sounds like we're signing another Brazilian talent to potentially play as a backup 10 and / right winger, maybe for the first team, according to Felix Johnson in that report. So if that is the case, then there isn't much space left for much more.
No, there isn't. I mean, just briefly on the backup 10 situation, obviously we know that Mason Mount's gone, Havertz is gone. We don't need to replace both of them, but you would imagine another body does need to come in there. Now, we've been linked with Gabri Vega, we've been linked with more recently Rayan Cherki from Lyon. And then, of course, there's Mateus Franca, those links that came out last night. Look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know much about Franca. I don't really know anything. I think a Premier League club were interested in him back in sort of January, February time. It could have been Wolves or it might have been Newcastle. Maybe I can't remember which one it was, but one of those, a Premier League team was interested in him. Again, people thought that'd be one for the future, but now, as you say, like there are some reports suggesting that maybe he could be ready to come straight into the team and do a job as a backup. So there's that option there. I mean, what are your thoughts out of Vega and Rayan Cherki? Because Vega, I think, looks like a talented boy. I've seen a bit more of him. It'd be a cheap deal to do at £34 million with his release clause. But something come out yesterday that was saying that PSG want to get this deal wrapped up by the end of this week, and they're moving pretty fast. So it looks like we could potentially have missed out on him, or maybe we weren't even that interested in the first place. But out of Vega and Cherki, if you had to have one of those two, who's more appealing for you?
For me, Cherki.
Yeah.
I think Vega for me is, I haven't watched him too much, but he seems like a nice player. But he doesn't seem like a special player. Yeah. And I think for me, with the players that we've already recruited in Carney, in Cassidy, in Andre Santos, if we've already signed talent, unless it's now a special talent, I don't know what the point would be in buying more. Because he's not guaranteeing me experience. He's also a player that has only just kind of arrived on the scene this season. I think the year before he was also playing in the third division of Spain, similar to Jackson. So I'm not guaranteed to get consistency. I'm not guaranteed to get anything. Again, it's another scouted one potentially, but it's another kind of hope, not an expectation. It's not a floor raiser in the squad in terms of first team strengthening. So I don't see it as one of those signings that have to be made. So I'm happy for him to go to PSG. I think Cherki is potentially going to be a very, very, very special player. The only issue with him is off the ball. What his contributions are off the ball. Pochettino, we've just seen what he's come from at PSG. Not saying Cherki is anywhere near the level of this, but Mbappe, Neymar, Messi off the ball were basically non-existent. They were defending with 8 men sometimes. You'd see them above the halfway line just walking. That can't happen. So even some people say, listen, you can excuse for one player. Is Cherki going to give you the same kind of output that Eden Hazard gave you to justify and quantify for not working as hard off the ball? Because if he can, and obviously he's very young, so it's going to be difficult to do so. He's probably not going to maybe be a week in, week out starter, maybe more rotation. I like the talent. I think the talent's great. Both footed, good close control, good vision, great passing rate. Like he looks like one of those throwback footballers that don't exist anymore. There's very far and few between that. You don't find them too often. You see a lot of system players now. He's more of a free roamer, more of a person that you give the keys to and you don't really have a set position for. I assume he play off the right, tucked in 10 with an overlapping fullback and, get as close to Nkunku as possible and try those combinations. But I just don't see Poch being too pushy for that one, considering he didn't want Felix. Obviously, Felix was more expensive, but again, same issues off the ball. And I think Poch will probably move towards someone else. But listen, if I had to pick, I'd definitely pick Cherki because at least I know I'm getting a special talent. And he's still only 19. He can potentially be worked on off the ball.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think what is clear is that we definitely need one more in there, whether it's a backup 10 or like a fourth winger, as it were, to go with Sterling, Madueke, and Mudryk. Then, look, Cherki would be the one for me, as you say. I think he's an exciting talent, can play 10, can play right. Obviously, needs to work on his off the ball stuff, but he's only 19 years of age. There's so much room to develop as a player. So, look, he's a special talent. He ticks the boxes. I wouldn't be complaining at that one. But again, you look at it, there's not an awful lot of options really potentially there. So it'll be interesting to see what route the club go down. But it does seem clear that it's going to be someone younger, not with an awful lot of experience under their belt, and they're going to be backing themselves that Poch is going to develop them and can turn them into a top player. But look, I think there's potential exciting options there. If we were to go in with like Madueke, Mudryk, and Nkunku, Cherki and stuff as options in that sort of across that front line behind the Jackson or a Broja, then there's a lot of potential there. But again, it is just potential at this point in time. It's how Pochettino harnesses that potential, how much hard work are these guys prepared to put in on the training pitch and all that sort of thing. So there's still, whilst it's exciting on paper, there's still a lot of things up in the air, and it's going to require a lot of things to go right for that to be a success on the pitch. I know we touched on it earlier, mate, but I just wanted to quickly go into number 9s on a touch more detail. Now, obviously, we know that we need a striker badly. We bought in Nicholas Jackson from Villarreal. A good deal, another one of those pickups that's kind of one for the future, or one that could hopefully make an impact now. I look at it, we were 30, 40 goals short last season. Now, the two ways of addressing that. You either sign a couple of players and hope that your whole front line can chip in sort of 10 to 12 goals between them to make up that deficit, or you go and spend reasonable money on someone that can get you 20 plus goals in the league and go down that route. But you look at the striker market, and yes, I'm desperate for Chelsea to get a centre forward, but I'm not desperate for us just to splash big money to get a centre forward just for the sake of it. You look at the market, we're not getting Harry Kane. Victor Osimhen, I can't see us getting him or spending that much money on him. You look at the other two who've been linked with, the likes of Dusan Vlahovic and Lautaro Martinez. I'm not that convinced on either one of those. Now, there doesn't really leave you many other options outside of that. You got talks of Kolo Muani from Frankfurt, but again, he's going to cost a lot of money as well. Is he the finished article? Not really. Is he any better than Martinez or Vlahovic? You could potentially argue not. So there's a difficulty here. Whilst we fully aware that we need a striker, and it is a huge gamble to go in and try and rely on those goals from Broja, who hasn't even completed a season for Chelsea yet. Look at Jackson, who's played one season at Villarreal, and obviously you got Nkunku, but you don't want to. There's going to be a huge burden on him as well. We find ourselves in a bit of a tricky situation. I mean, I had one thought that I was saying on a live stream the other day that I'd be interested to get your thoughts on it. Do you think there's a situation where we could look at it and go, right, we want Ivan Toney, we're going to go with Nkunku, Broja and Jackson until January, and then try and sign Toney on the cheap in January? Do you think there's any chance or any plausibility in that?
I'm a big fan of Toney's gameplay. I think he's almost a perfect profile, what we needed this summer. But for the betting ban, I think he would have been my first choice because he can hold up the ball. He's very good technically. He's shown that he can score goals in this league. He's got everything. And he's a great finisher. But obviously now with that ban, it all depends on how and what he can do in terms of training. Because obviously it's a ban for football overall, not just playing, but also training as well. I believe, I don't know when he's allowed to train. So it depends what condition and what version of Toney we're getting in January, if we go for him in January, because we just don't know. So that deal and that situation is looking a bit confusing now for me personally. Kane would be the dream, of course. His contract runs out next summer. I highly doubt he'll make the move across London just purely because loyalty and he'll basically be undoing potentially everything that he's built with the Tottenham fan base, which is obviously something he values. Hence why he's not moved or forced to move. Before last summer with City, I think it was, and then or the season before with City, and then you find yourself looking at the market, and I agree with you. I don't really like it. I don't like much out there. I see Martinez, I see even Muani, who's I don't know what his price is going to be, but it was initially 100 million from Frankfurt they wanted. I'm not willing. I wouldn't be willing to pay that kind of fee for him. Vlahovic, I'm not a massive pusher on. I don't think the market is great. So I think for me, it is a worry with what we have, but I think we have to also count on Sterling not having anywhere near a season like he had last season, because the season he had last season, probably the worst season of his career. I think he's already quoted on saying that he's meant to be bringing goals into the team. And he showed glimpses at the start of Tuchel's reign, start of Sterling's reign, that he can get some goals, and he was getting a few goals for us. So Sterling for me has to chip in along with Jackson. If he's starting the majority of games with Broja, if he's starting the majority of games, if a striker starts 30 games in a Premier League season, or 35 games, you're looking for hopefully Tammy Abraham numbers around 15 goals, which he could easily be capable of. And then you're looking at Nkunku, but Mudryk and Madueke, this is where coaching comes into it. We've got to develop them into taking those shots from just outside the box or cutting inside and contributing as well. They need to be scoring goals. So I think goals are going to have to be shared out. You saw Arsenal, they didn't have the most clinical striker in Jesus. They then had to go to Nketiah, who did put the ball in the back of the net a fair few times for them. But until Trossard came in, that wasn't the most clinical position in the world for them. But they had Martinelli, they had Saka contributing off the flanks, they had Odegaard. And that's basically what we've got to be doing with our situation. Even Man United, they don't have a world-class striker last season. They make top four. Martial's always injured. Weghorst is awful. Rashford was the only one getting the goals, very heavily kind of reliant on him. but they had contributors from Bruno Fernandes as well. Anthony chipped in a little bit. Sancho definitely didn't. So, you know, for me, it's not like everybody else has got a world-class striker. You know, everybody else is kind of in the same ballpark as us in that regard. And I think we have to develop and coach our players.
Yeah, no, I think it is as simple as that. I mean, look, it is a really tricky one because whatever we do, there's going to be big pressure on us, because if we do spend big money on a Martinez or a Vlahovic, there's going to be big expectations on them. And if we don't, and we go with what we've already got, there's going to be big pressure there as well, because you're asking a massive amount from players that are very inexperienced in playing top-level football in Broja and Jackson. You're asking them to hit the ground running, and between them, you'd ideally want 20 league goals between them. But you just, at this point in time, you can't necessarily see where that's going to come from. But then there's no guarantees either. This is what, it doesn't annoy me, but like when people say, oh, we've got to go and sign a striker, oh, we have to go and get a top-class number 9. It's like, well, hang on a second. We've been down that top-class number 9 route for years and years, and they've all been shit. Lukaku, Morata, Higuain, Torres, Shevchenko. Like we've been there and we've done that. We spent hundreds of millions and it's not worked. So part of me thinks, well, we've been and done that with so many top strikers. Why shouldn't we go and try with some slightly less proven people? And maybe that could be better for us. Play more of a team game, not necessarily have like a standout star man at the top of the pitch. Everyone contributes a bit more between them, and we make up the goals that way. Maybe that's a better way for us to go. But as we say, it's not the best market out there. I don't want us to just spend stupid money for the sake of us getting a number 9 in, unless it's actually really going to benefit the team. Because we were all so excited for Lukaku, and it was an absolute disaster. And now I'm just a little bit like, let's kind of hold fire a little bit on that, and only do something if we think it's right and it is going to benefit the team. And if there's nothing out there that's really going to benefit the team, or we think is going to benefit the team, let's trust ourselves. Let's go with what we've got and develop what we've got, and kind of see where it takes us. But it's a tricky one. Like I wouldn't like to be in the club's position on this one, because as you said, the market's pretty dead, and
we do have to qualify for Champions League. So
exactly,
but it is a situation you can look at in January. Like up until January, all we have is Premier League and Carabao Cup. So it's really not that straining in terms of a schedule. And I think in Nkunku, really, we need to be really trying to maximize him, because he can finish. This guy can get goals for us. Sterling as well should be able to get goals. He does miss big chances, but he should be able to get goals. So we need to create a system that puts them in as many goal-scoring positions as possible. And if we can do that alongside with Jackson, I do think we can get through the first half of the season. If we do need to top it up in January and look around again, potentially be quite smart with what's out there and see what the market's like, then great. I think for me, I would regret more signing a big name that I'm almost certain is probably not going to work out, because it's not the right fit. And then that becomes a bust on a 5-year contract that we can't move. Already having to still try and deal with this Lukaku situation. He still needs to be moved on, and permanently. I'd be more annoyed with that than not signing someone and biding our time a little bit and trying to make the right decision.
No, definitely, for sure. I certainly agree on that point. Just last few things, bro. Let's talk about Hakim Ziyech. Obviously, day of recording Tuesday. He's put something on his Instagram. Him sat on I don't think it's Cobham. He's on some pitch somewhere. And he's posted knee problems with a few laughing faces. Now, obviously, that's referring to the fact that his move to Al Nassr, whilst it's not completely off the table, it seems to have broken down. They highlighted knee and hip issues in his medical. They've altered their offer, so they've changed their offer. They've 40% reduction in base wages, but he can still go and join there. But Ziyech doesn't want to agree to that. Something's not adding up here. It seems like we can't get rid of this guy. PSG, all the people were over dealing with the Enzo stuff. We obviously left the work experience guys to deal with the fax machine, and they fucked it. So that fell through last minute. And that obviously didn't help him out. And then you get this move to Al Nassr, and that was all confirmed. And I was thinking, it's a little bit strange how this is taking so long to get officially announced. You see Mendy, you see Koulibaly and stuff all done. You're thinking, why is this Ziyech one taking so long? And then you hear issues with the medical. What do you think's going on there? Because he's clearly saying there's nothing wrong with his knee, but those medical tests can't be lying either.
It's tough with Ziyech because he has had knee issues and he has had injuries. Every time he used to build up a little bit of form for Chelsea, he used to be he unfortunately then get injured, and it would ruin any sort of momentum he was trying to build. But if I'm seeing Kante's passing medicals and I'm seeing, come on, I mean, surely he must be able to pass the medical. We're never going to really know because now he's come out and said basically, listen, that's all rubbish. And obviously the reason why the move broke down is first of all because they said he failed his medical. Then they tried to drop his wages due to that, and he rejected them because of it. Now maybe he's trying to hint at the fact that they tried to pull out last minute, drop the wages and change their mind. And then he was like, I'm not having that. I'm not doing that. I don't know. It's tough to know what's really happened because if he's not injured, then there was really no need for that move to collapse, really. So I don't know. I'm just hoping that he isn't, and there is no knee issue because he still needs to be sold. If there's been an issue with the Saudi club and they've pulled out last minute and tried to come with an excuse, which is basically what he seems to be referring to, then he still needs to be sold. And if it's not a medical issue, then great, because then we can still do negotiations with other clubs and he shouldn't fail on different medical. We're trying to think of how this could be a shot at Chelsea. I don't think it is. I mean, we're definitely happy to get rid. Yeah. We're not trying to mess up any deal, I'm sure, because, we've already done the PSG paperwork situation in January because we were focusing on Enzo. We're definitely not trying to keep him. So I can't see how he's taking a shot at us.
Where do you think he goes, though? Because it's mad that a player of his quality, obviously it's not worked out at Chelsea, but there doesn't seem to be any market for him at all. Maybe not on his wages or whatever. I think it's on €6 million a year, which is probably, I don't know, 4 million quid or something like that.
Yeah.
It's quite high for a player of his age and someone that's not really delivered for a number of years now. But are you surprised there doesn't really, outside of Al Nassr, seem to be any market for him at all?
I think it's early days, but I am worried about what market. But I said the same with Pulisic as well. I wasn't really sure what team was going to come in for him because we know that European teams don't have the most money right now. Lyon then come in with a random 21 million bid. AC Milan low ball us massively. Seems like he has a preference to go there, so that's a problem. Ziyech has got 2 years left on his contract though. His contract doesn't run out in 2024. It's 2025. So he's one of those ones where, after the World Cup that he had with Morocco, you'd expect to see teams, at least a few teams, queuing up. Maybe it's because it's so early in the window, I don't know. But I would still be surprised if no one came in for him, even though I don't know exactly who is going to come in. I'm not sure who it is going to be. But someone should, because he's shown that when he's at his best and he's absolutely loving his football and he's committed, he can perform to a high level. So I think he's one of those players, and I said it when we signed him, that he needs to be the focal point of the team attacking wise. He's got to be getting as many touches, as much volume of the ball as possible. And I think at Chelsea, he's come into a team where, sometimes he might get the ball, sometimes he might not. And I'm not saying you need to build a team around him, but you do need to be a little bit lopsided in terms of the traffic and send the ball down his way quite a lot on that right hand side. And I think we're just one of those teams that he's not he's not good enough to come and dominate a team like ours and be the main player. I think he's got to take a step down in terms of the quality of clubs he plays for, and then he's more likely to be a star player. But he is, for me, and a winger in this league, he's too predictable. I know exactly what he's going to do before he even does it, and it's cutting on that left hand side, cutting on the left foot and swing it in. He hasn't got a right foot. He's not particularly quick. 1v1 in tight situations. Yes, he's got a little bit of skill, might be able to get himself out of something, but he's not exactly taking players on and going past them with ease. So for me, I just think he hasn't got enough. He almost feels like an older version of Anthony at Man United, is what I'd describe him as.
Yeah, we just need to get rid of him as quickly as possible. Final thing, I know we touched on it earlier, goalkeepers. Now, obviously, we sold Mendy to Saudi, got some half decent money back for him. No issues with that at all. But what did surprise me is the fact that the club don't want to buy, well, supposedly don't want to buy a number one goalkeeper. They want to spend don't want to spend big money on a keeper. They just want to bring in someone that could challenge Kepa and provide competition. Now, firstly, what are your thoughts on that? Does that surprise you? Because I would have thought that Onana at like 55 million euros is a great price for someone that's 27 and clearly a very good goalkeeper. Obviously, Mignan, I don't think is going to happen. But Are you surprised that the club are taking that route? And it looks like we're going to have Kepa for at least another year. Because I would have thought that with some half-decent goalkeepers out there, and Onana would represent a big upgrade and not at a very big cost for a top-class goalkeeper at 27. So that has slightly surprised me that we're just going to go and buy a number 2 and maybe we'll reassess in a year's time.
Maybe Onana's price point isn't the same for us as it is for Man United, because obviously we've got Lukaku and they're trying to get Lukaku. So maybe there's a bit of games being played, but I agree on the whole that we should be moving for a new goalkeeper. And I think Onana is an upgrade on Kepa. I look at cross collection. I look at dominating your penalty area and being commanding. I look at that, and I think Onana's gonna, blow Kepa out of the water. I look at distribution. Onana's definitely better than Kepa in that regard. I think Kepa's good or decent, but I don't think he's great. And then it comes down to shot stopping and it, but in terms of reach, Onana again has got more reach. So I thought that would have been a pretty clear upgrade. Obviously, Mike at AC Milan, I don't know whether or not he even wants to join us. There's been reports on that. I just think it's one of those ones where the reports are very conflicting. 1 minute it's Pochettino wants to use Kepa as his first choice. Then it's we can't afford to go for some of those top goalkeepers and we want a second choice. I'm not really sure what it is because it's two different reports. And then also you got Solina as well, the American goalkeeper, who he's got a lot of talent. And maybe that could be our Courtois in a way where at a young age, he's already shown he's got the potential to start games in a couple of years' time or maybe in a year's time. And that would be brilliant because then now we don't have an issue. It's very few and far between you get these young goalkeepers that are ready to start for top clubs. You've got Courtois there at Atletico Madrid when he was on loan. He kind of showed himself. De Gea at Man United, but it is usually an age range that is closer to the 30s than the early 20s. So I hope he's going to be ready. If that's the plan, then fair enough. I can wait on this Kepa thing. But if he's not ready, then we need a goalkeeper. In terms of short-term, kind of backups now to really push Kepa, because Kepa can't be the undisputed first choice with no competition because he's just too risky for that. You've got potentially Bono at Sevilla. They need money. You've got maybe Keylor Navas. You've got a few options, but this position for me, I would have liked to have had it properly cleared up with a new number 1, but it doesn't look like we're going to get that. So that is already disappointing, personally.
Yeah, I think it is as well. Like, you look at the priorities this summer: midfield, centre forward, goalkeeper. I would say out of those 3 positions, the goalkeeper was bottom of the list. Of course, I don't think we're expecting to challenge for Premier League titles or challenge for any big trophies. But ultimately, we know that when we get back to that Kepa is not going to be a goalkeeper of the required quality to get us winning Premier League titles, to get us winning the big trophies again. So we do need to upgrade there. But I suppose if we can't find what we want, or we're not prepared to spend the money or whatever it is, then going with Kepa for maybe one more season isn't the end of the world. Now, people, for me, make Kepa out to be way worse than he is. I'm fully aware that he's not good enough for the long term and we need to do better, but he wasn't the reason why we were terrible last season. The defence on the whole was actually pretty good. It was the other end of the pitch that was the big issue. So, I mean, the ways that some people talk about Kepa, it's like he's a Sunday league goalkeeper. Look, he's still half decent and he can do a job, and he would be good enough for us to get top 5 and back in the Champions League. But you do need to reassess and kind of go again. Go again in that position. But we've been so blessed with keepers down the year, Cech, Courtois and whatnot. And now you come to it and you're like, well, this is the first time where we haven't got a great number 1 goalkeeper. So it's going to be interesting to see what we do. But I don't want us to go and sort of spend 40 million quid on someone like David Raya or something like that. Just bring in a solid number 2 keeper and let's wait and see what happens. But I don't envisage any goalkeeper news taking place until sort of after pre-season, because Poch will want to make his own mind up on Kepa and then we go from there. But I think his wages as well are one of the big reasons why we also can't get rid of him. But yeah, seems like a pretty good point to round out this episode. Got through a lot of stuff. Matisse, thanks for your time, bro. Massively appreciated. If people live under a rock, don't know where you are, haven't seen much of you, where can they check you out?
For me, MAH on YouTube, 3 letters, nice and simple. That's where the content's coming out. You see me on DR Sports as well, Big Six, on those channels as well. But if you're looking for daily content on Chelsea, then my channel's where you're going to see it. Much appreciated, bro. Great convo. Much appreciated and a pleasure. Thank you.
Nah, guys, make sure you check it out. It'll be all linked in the description. As I said at the start of the video, smash the like, subscribe to Chelsea Fan TV if you haven't done so already. Make sure you check out Matisse's channel and subscribe. And guys, we'll catch you again in another episode soon.